Hello again, I'm Stephen Jerome, author of The London Year. I'd like to take just a moment to acknowledge the passing of a dear old friend of mine. She is credited in the dedication page, one of 4 people mentioned by name in the dedication. And I've written with Pat over the years. We've collaborated on things, or she's advised me on things, or she read one of the very first versions of this book, which was actually, years ago, just FYI. This was originally a play I think it was in 3 acts, something like that. Anyway, a decade plus later, it evolved into a novel, my 5th novel, though my 3rd published novel. So let's continue anyway, where we left off with my dear friend Patricia in mind. This is part 22. Just a quick, we're in the flat that Terry has rented, shares with Bert and Carlos, his 2 slightly older American expats who are living in London for 5 years or something, but rather stuck in their place as working under the table, whereas Terry can work legally and is footloose and fancy-free. Okay, here we go. On another night, Carlos had a visitor. His name was Ron, a straight guy friend of a friend he knew from San Francisco who was passing through London as he backpacked around Europe. Carlos invited him for dinner, and I helped with the hosting duties. To be extra sociable, Carlos added a rare treat, marijuana. When he started to roll a joint, Ron looked up, quietly aghast. I knew just what he was thinking. In England, I'd already discovered they mixed tobacco with their pot. As a Californian, I was positively appalled. Purchasing drugs, occasionally, speaking now only of marijuana and hashish, I discovered that it was all a bigger deal, a much darker deal than it was in the States. On the West Coast, at least, smoking pot, however illegal, was nevertheless part of the culture. It came from Mexico, practically local, and you could buy it anywhere cheap. In Europe, it was neither affordable nor as easy to come by, and highly illegal. Even a pinch could land you in jail. The product itself came from Turkey and Afghanistan, which meant that one was truly connecting to the international drug trade and all its dangerous connotations. An entirely different vibe than hippie tripping in the counterculture. As for Ron, there was a kind of harmless naivety about him. Carlos and I both chuckled when he said, "Go to the can," instead of use the bathroom or for toilet, and use phrases like "do Dubrovnik," referencing his travels. Even to us, he seemed very American. Carlos didn't mention that he and his flatmates were gay. None of us were obvious. We assumed Ron thought we were straight. No reason to talk about any of it. He was only coming for dinner. Then Bert came home from the Coleherne with his buddy, and they were in very good spirits, which added fun to the introductions. Ron rose to the occasion, saying he should join us next time he was in town, as he'd never been to a real English pub. Sure, we said, thinking, of course, of the Coleherne. After those pleasantries, Bert and his pal excused themselves and retired to the other room. Carlos and I exchanged glances. Things were about to get awkward. In no time, the grunting and groaning started. There was no ignoring it, no talking over the obvious sounds of 2 guys, their brains out right next door. If there'd been a cat in the bag before, it was completely outed now. Time dragged on excruciatingly as we all waited for the big finish. Oh, God. While I fussed with a fresh pot of tea, Carlos scrambled together another joint, and we all groped in vain for normal conversation. But words were totally beside the point. Our poor captive audience had only 2 options: walk out in disgust or grin and bear it. To his credit, Ron weathered the embarrassing storm until Bert and his friend reappeared. They walked through the kitchen smiling sheepishly, then went up to the street to say their goodbyes, but this time Bert didn't come back. Pavel was the bigger problem. He had a remarkable disregard for boundaries. Perhaps we should have seen it immediately when he brought Jute home not a week after Pavel himself had moved in. He was seemingly blind to the possibility that he, or even he and Jute, might be an imposition. I don't even think it was willful disregard on Pavel's part. He was just profoundly self-centered. I couldn't say anything. He was Carlos's friend and Carlos was top dog. But Pavel would just appropriate other people's things, food from the fridge or clean underwear from our dresser drawers, even our toothbrushes, no lie. He never cleaned his dishes, left them on the sink to soak. Jute did his laundry when their dirty clothes piled up on the floor by their bed. I came home once and realized Pavel had gone through my room and rifled through all my personal things. When I called him on it, dumbstruck at the gall as much as I was pissed off, he said he'd been looking for a book of poetry I'd showed him several days earlier. Then ask me, I said. You don't just go through people's stuff. Well, it's the flat, he replied, as if to say, we're all family, so we share. No, Pavel, it's my stuff. A confused silence followed. I really don't think he got it. And so I learned, inconsiderate people don't know they're being inconsiderate because they're inconsiderate. So I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you for watching. We're going to stay tuned for part 23. Oh, I'm getting confused. Thank you for watching.